Committee Member Hunter. Chair Key.
Here.
Committee Member Merrill. Committee Member Robinson. Committee Member Robinson is not here today. Committee Member Rozier. Council Liaison Whitmer.
Okay, thank you, Will. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda? Not on the agenda. Okay, seeing none. Nothing online either, right? Okay. We'll move on to presentation. Susan? I have you set up right there. Yeah, no podium today.
Hi, everyone. Is it? Yeah. I'm Susan Knox, and I've run the Play School in the Park for 27 years. I know. So we're nearing the end of our 27th year, and I just called upon to give a brief presentation about, I guess, our status every year. I'll just give it really brief, and feel free to ask questions after. We run a part day and a full day program. Added the full day program in the last couple years. We serve 2 to 5-year-olds, although these days it's mostly 2 to 4-year-olds because a lot of our 4-year-olds are going to the transitional kindergartens at the public schools. But we are still doing okay, and it looks like next year is going to be at least as much enrollment as this year, if not a little bit more. So we're hoping that we might be able to grow, probably not back to our former levels, but grow a little bit and stay vibrant in the park for years. So you generally ask about our facilities, which are definitely getting old. We had some updates this year, or some problems, I guess I should say, right, Will?
Were they addressed?
They were addressed immediately by Will. So big kudos to Will. I send him an email, somebody comes out. I mean, we're talking like leaks in the roof or plumbing issues or, things that just are going to happen. But they're super responsive. And we've been, so I think those have been all taken care of. Knock on wood, there's nothing right now. One thing that I did want to just throw out there is I've noticed that traffic goes really fast from our building to the end of the parking lot where the tennis courts are. There's some nice speed bumps all along, but then they kind of pick up speed and zoom to those tennis courts. So it obviously worries me because that's the parking lot that we use. That's where the children are. A lot of times there's dogs or people walking. So it's just something to consider. I don't know that I have a solution. I just kind of want to put out there that I speed. As far as our facilities, I think they're hanging in. What we probably need to do some floors in some of the classrooms. They've really buckled the linoleum. So I'll talk to the council about that. I'll take care of maintenance on the play yard, which I do. But that's it.
What percentage of your students?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I didn't look it up. I'm sorry. I can forward you that information.
You can send it to Will, and he'll.
Yeah.
share it with
I apologize.
And then you'll be running a summer program again this year?
So we do run on a school year calendar. We follow Menlo Park schools. Our last day of the school year is June 13th, and then we start up immediately on Monday with a summer program. Have mostly our continuing students, but we do accept for that up to have some 5-year-olds back. They were at TK last year. They're coming back for summer. For summer? I think around 30 each week. So our last, August 8th, our last, and then we have a couple weeks off before we start the school year. For next year, we have about 45. Some of those are just like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but the majority of them are Monday.
Okay. Yeah.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have approval of minutes. So the May 7th minutes were shared with the committee members. Are there any comments or questions or revisions? Seeing none, do I have a motion? A second? All in favor? Aye. Any nays or abstentions? Seeing none, approved unanimously. Okay, number 5A, pickleball. I guess, Robert, you have the report?
Yeah, so the report is rather short. And so thank you, Chair, members of the committee. The City Council has asked the committee to take a look at options for expansion and potential permanent facilities to support pickleball use in the park. There were several ideas that have been raised in different.
Oh, if you are here for pickleball, do you guys need the attachments or you? Sure, that'd be great. Yeah. Oh, there's a stack over there. There's a copy here too. It's in the middle if anyone wants it. But please go on, Robert.
Sure. And so there were several options that have been discussed, and the council is asking for feedback, and that includes that there was an offer to convert the play court to a hard court so that court one could be permanently converted for pickleball use. There's been conversations potentially around conversion or removal and replacement of the handball court with pickleball court, and potentially trying to make the area bigger. And so what we've provided as attachments, and I'll share on the screen, are kind of what the current configuration is, how big, how much space is required for pickleball, and showing some exhibits so that you can take a look and make have some conversations. It's not anticipated that you would have, you may or may not come up with a recommendation tonight, but this is certainly the initiation of that conversation. So with regards to, here we go. So this is from USA Pickleball. So your standard pickleball court is striped out at about 20 by 44. That does not include side areas and back areas which are required. And so what they have is for new construction, the minimum width requirement that they are recommending is about 34 feet with an overall length of 64, which allows for, I think, 10 feet on the back at the two ends, and then I think about 8 feet for each side. Also included in the packet are different variations of multi-court play or multi-court facilities. And so that includes side by side. And if you have them side by side, you can double up on some of that side space. And so here in these exhibits, it's showing basically between 8 and 11 feet in between the courts, minimum of 5 or 7 feet on the side. And then there's also configurations of if you were to redo a, for example, like what we have at the park now, where you take the space that is associated with a tennis court, there's different configurations. We have one court on each side. There's options for converting that to 4 courts as shown in the exhibit here. These are just layouts just so that you're aware of how much space would be required for the courts. Also included is kind of information with regards to the current court configuration we have is roughly 60 feet wide by 120 feet deep. That's the dimension of each of the current tennis courts. And then the handball court is roughly 30 by 60. So Conceivably, you can take that area and convert it into one court. And so there may be opportunities to try and stack them, but what I'll remind you is right now, in terms of access to get to courts, I think they're 5 and 6. You actually kind of either walk along this path across the handball court and go into the gate on the backside here, and the access to this court is actually through the other. And so with conversion of that area, if that happens, we just would have to figure out an alternate path and entry into the tennis courts. And so that could be access from the pathway to the Felton Gables Gate and kind of coming around the backside, and may or may not entail having to redo access into the tennis courts from the backside in terms of placement. And so again, this is just a starting point for conversations. These are just to give you the basic information on how much space a court needs. And so as you have your conversations about how many, how big, just so that you understand, at least in this immediate vicinity, how much space there might be available for that. I can also share on the screen kind of like a Google Earth kind of top view of the park and the area just to support your conversation.
Can you just confirm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I think it goes the other way. I think court 1 is the one with the pickleball on it.
Yeah.
And so it's 1, 2, 3 going up. And then I don't remember the numbers for the other ones, but I do know that court 1 is, Bob can answer.
So,
Okay, so then I apologize. So the back courts are 4 and 5.
there's just 2 pickleball courts.
There's 2 pickleball courts currently
number one.
overstriped on court 1. Okay.
And 3 pickleball courts would comfortably fit into one of our tennis courts.
You can conceive, a lot of places go up to 4.
Yeah, the only question
Pretty
is. if
crowded.
It gets crowded,
Yeah,
so
'cause
you have
Your
your
balls
two.
might end up in someone
Oh,
else's
all the
court.
time.
So,
um,
It'd be good to have more, but I'm not sure about.
So,
well, you could put a little fence between the courts so that,
But you're including extra green space,
yes.
yeah, well, I mean, you'd utilize most of
total space.
the total space.
You would demo the tennis net and then put a court right in the middle there.
Yeah, but.
Well, I
Expand that.
think if you're gonna try and put 3, they would likely go across the width, for lack of a better way to put it, meaning
They
that
would
right
face
now
perpendicular
they're,
to the tennis courts.
they would be
Perpendicular or parallel?
perpendicular to the existing tennis court. Right now, we have 2 that are parallel,
Just,
and so conceivably, you can go to 3, you can leave it at 2, you can go to 3 perpendicular, or you can go 4 with 2 on each side of that tennis net.
Okay. And then one of the possible next steps for staff is to look at cost estimates, but are you looking for some direction from us? in
So
terms of-
what we are asking ultimately is or the council's asking ultimately for the committee to kind of think of what the different options and opportunities are, provide some feedback as to what those options and what the recommendations might be. And then from that point, we would start looking at costs, because right now there's
Yeah, a wide
too
array.
many options, and so we're not necessarily going to.
I'm thinking there's 3, but we can.
Well,
we
like I
can-
say, it also depends on how many courts you want to do. So for example, if you're, I'm going to pull up, I'm going to share Google Earth here. And so spin that around a little bit. There is limited space on that backside of those tennis courts, between the tennis courts and the pathway that is adjacent to the train tracks. You may be able to put two kind of back to back like we have now, but then you're going fairly close to the
Neighbor's fence.
neighbor's fencing, which is certainly an option. But you're not going to be able to fit more than that. So if the objective is to put more than two, this isn't necessarily a viable location.
Okay.
That being
You
said,
do have room for a third, it's just that that land has a structure on it for storage. And then
it also
is that-
narrows.
Also, okay. The path, though, can it be moved over, or is it's not enough room even with?
I don't recall. I think it's fair. There's a little bit of vegetation
Yeah, there's
on the
definitely a tree
side.
there.
And so as you get towards the handball court, there's trees.
Yeah.
And so as you if you come down closer to the Little League, you have these trees here. But you can see how the pathway kind of
Yeah.
comes inward there.
See, it turns in. That's the
Right.
gate that people use coming
Felton
from
Gables.
Felton Gables.
Yeah,
Kids ride their bikes and stuff like that. It starts to curve, so it goes down. It matches up with the round total path, so the kids can ride out. Bridge.
okay.
Okay.
So
Does get
here's
tight.
a zoom out picture of the facility. And like I said, if we're looking at two courts, right now we have two courts sitting in a tennis court. So you're kind of looking at that 120, almost 120 foot length to fit two courts back to back there.
Okay. So why don't we take committee questions, then we'll get public comment, and then we'll come up with the committee discussion after that. So are there any committee questions?
Well, should we just clarify what the issues are
Sure. Yeah.
that, just so
That's-
everybody's
that's
on
the
the same
question, yeah.
page, that,
Sure.
that there's more usage than there is capacity, essentially, or more demand than there is capacity.
Currently, yes.
So it's about creating additional courts, play court, converting handball court, or finding some other place for
Or we could also increase the times.
that.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, that should probably be first thing to consider because it
Yeah, it doesn't, changing, demoing, anything, yeah.
I wanted to make sure we were all on the same page about what.
So I'm going to say that we do have a couple folks online. Somebody's putting comments in the chat. I think as we go to public comment, we'll just allow them to speak at that
Okay,
time.
sure, that's fine. Are there any other committee questions?
We have a link what's the width of this area down here behind the ball court? And there's 120 here. What's the width right there?
Okay, so we have a couple of, just to clarify, and so I'll do this on the screen. It's just a rough estimate. So we have a pathway that runs along the backside of that court, and the ground is kind of retained a little bit, so it's a little higher. It's also still sloped, so there are grading issues there, but what I can do is, I think there's a measuring tool, and get you a rough number.
Yeah, you can right-click and then.
Yeah, so I'm going to move this out of the way. And so roughly at this bottom end from the retaining wall to the pathway, I'm going to guess is about there. Oops. Why is it not?
Going from the pathway down to floor, about a 3.5 or
Yeah, so this here at this end is, looks like it's less than 30 feet. Right, and so it would be really tight as you bring that closer to the Little League field.
So the handball court is a possibility. It's not completely impossible to,
No, no, the handball court is convertible, but the question is, if you convert it, that's basically the size of a court.
right.
And so if you're trying to accommodate more than that, you can utilize some of this area as well.
At
Why you
least
couldn't
one.
utilize that area because,
Yeah, so,
and I have one other question. Have we had anybody bitch about?
not yet. So the other thing to work around is actually access to those rear courts as well. But it's certainly something that we can delve into deeper.
So one, possibly two, and just one is going to be 100% dedicated to pickleball, so would increase the capacity considerably. Not eliminating the two that are already on court one, it's just adding. Right.
I'm thinking, I'm not gonna go out there again with my, I honestly think that, I can't remember what's underneath those trees, but I know there's a drop off, I get that. But you could stretch it from the end of the, whatever that's court, four, I guess it's not. And from that end to the other end, to the narrowing end, I don't know how many feet that is, I'm gonna find out. But I think that made the most sense for the last 4 years. Everyone's known about the thing. Why can't we put one there? We've been out on that.
Well, I can attest somebody's been out there because they painted some graffiti on the
Oh,
wall.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I think, I know Rick's working with a possible donor for permanent courts. I think what that donor does need is the cost estimate and the options. So getting, the per court costs for this back area would be important.
Yeah, like I said, I think that that's something that we can look at, but it's really, what is it that we're talking about? Because I mean, I can say the costs for doing that are significantly different than redoing the clay court, which is different than saying, okay, leave everything as is and take away and permanently convert court one. And so what we're looking for is
The
kind
donor
of,
may have a preference, but they're going to want to know, well, how much is it if we do this?
understood.
Yeah.
And so will the council and that, but before we run,
You
try
want
to
our
run
preference.
numbers, we kind of need to know where to focus attention.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of people playing.
But there's somebody on court 6.
Yeah, I see. There's a lesson going on one, and there's one single guy hitting some ball on the other. Other than that, there's nobody else out there.
So if there are no more questions, let's turn it over for public comment, if there are any public comments. So why don't we take it in the room first, and then we can take it online.
So if you can come to the mic, that would be great.
Please introduce yourself and.
Sure, happy to. My name is Don Keller. I'm a 35-year resident on James Ave in Atherton. I played tennis at Holbrook Palmer Park with my kids when they were growing up. That was terrific. I've recently picked up pickleball. I play probably 5 times a week. Folks here. I play mainly in Menlo Park. I also play in Palo Alto. I play in Foster City, in Redwood City, in Portola Valley. Basically, there's communities of folks that are playing all over the place. It's terrific to go see in Portola Valley on Sunday morning. There's regularly 50, 60 people playing there on Sunday morning. But what I would emphasize on this is pickleball, what I've seen in the various communities, it's an unbelievable community development sport where people get to know each other. There's a lot of activity, people that are older, there's 80-year-old folks that are out there playing. It's just absolutely terrific from a community perspective. So I would really encourage us to think about that as we come up with a solution here. It's not just about trying to squeeze in a couple more folks. I rarely play in Holbrook Palmer. I try to get on Saturday mornings at Holbrook Palmer, but it's always booked. There's that much demand. Frankly, it's unbelievably frustrating to see that there's 4 courts taken by player capital. just the one court that's available for pickleball is all full. To be honest, I think that's a complete disservice to the residents of Atherton like myself. What I would recommend from a community perspective is whatever you do, I think to build a community of folks that come regularly and play together is to have 4 courts. One of the things I see up there, and I'll just throw this out there, I think that handball court would be terrific to build and then use that court right next to it for 3 courts. You'd have 4 courts. You'd only be using 1 tennis court for that. I think that'd be a great result. You'd solve the problem without really taking away anything. I don't think you'd solve the problem by just increasing the amount of time on Saturday afternoon. I think I think the demand times are in the morning. I think also most people play for 2 hours at a time, which is different than what you see for tennis or signing for an hour at a time. Our current system doesn't work great. When I go to Menlo Park, for example, you just show up, you meet people, you play with them. It's an awesome, as I said, community perspective. That's my.
So your preference is to have the 2 permanent courts in the back instead of converting, say, a regular tennis court into three courts,
Oh.
3 pickleball courts?
My preference is, I think whatever you need to do would be to have 4 courts.
He said, take the pickleball, take the handball court, and then take one,
Yeah.
then convert one of the tennis courts that's right next to it so that so this would be like pickleball.
Okay.
All those courts would be,
So add the 2 courts in the back and permanently change a tennis court into permanent pickleball court.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying 2 courts in the back. I'm just saying 1 court in the back and then 3 courts on that 1 tennis court.
So,
Oh, okay, it's a
okay,
parking
so
lot.
I can parse that, but I think we just need to take the public comment.
Okay, sure,
and then
sure,
we
sure.
can.
Okay, thank you.
I want
Don.
to understand, and you guys don't think 3 courts on a tennis, you think
We use 4 in Menlo Park and it works. And it's terrific. It's crowded,
it's crowded?
but it works. And I would prefer that over 2 courts that are more spacious because to build a community, you need more people able to show up.
Okay, thank you, Don. Do you guys want to comment or? You don't have to. Oh, okay. Okay. If the funding comes through, yes. But that's a big if because, it depends on the donor's position.
And do we also want to add into the mix the drop-in capability, what most of the other parks? Okay, I just want to I agree.
You don't want a key system and all, you just want Woodstock. You want everybody to just go out there and play.
Or at least
Yeah.
time slots where that's,
If you felt the need to keep the key system, it'd be great still to have a drop-in for those that have keys or that.
So basically,
Gotcha.
open play, you can't sign up, but it has to be pickleball use, something like that. Yeah, okay.
You probably have a mix of reservations and open play at different times. That's what Portola Valley does. They have open play for certain amounts of time, reservations for other parts.
and Nealon is just drop-in.
Just drop-in.
Okay.
All right, so we have Kat on the line. Kat, if you can unmute, you have the floor to speak.
Oh, thank you. Kat Westover, and I've been coming to these commission meetings since you guys started talking about pickleball a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I actually met Don through pickleball, even though we both live in Atherton, we met at Nealon because of the drop-in. So in my comments, I don't know if people can see it on the screen, I actually measured both Nealon's court and the Holbrook Palmer Park Court 1, and Holbrook Palmer Park is actually 2 feet wider. So there is plenty of room. Nobody's ever said at Nealon, oh, this is too crowded. No, they're grateful for every court they can get because sometimes it's tough. And what Don was saying about Fridays and Saturdays, I go on at midnight on a Friday or Saturday to try to get a court for the following weekend. It's that cutthroat to get a court on the weekend. I also agree with Don that we do need a few drop-in a week. That's what creates the community, by meeting people. who are there already that you rotate in to play with. When you reserve a court, you're not meeting any new people. You're playing with the people you come with. Dancing with. So I think that's all I have to say. That's it. Yeah, we can definitely fit 4. And I'm pro a few drop-in days. It doesn't have to be every day, like every other day, 2 or 3 times a week for drop-in, so that you can still make the reservation. And even a drop-in, you can still require a key to get in. So I don't see why you would say you don't need a key. You just have to go with someone with a key, which is how you do it now when you reserve.
Yeah, yeah, at least one player. Well, see, I think that the tough part with the key is that we require that that for the players on the court, at least one person has a key.
Right.
And it's possible with the open play that not everyone will have a key that is on the court. Yeah.
Well, if people let them in.
Let people in.
Yeah, I know that, and that will leave the gate open.
Yeah.
The payment of the key pays for support.
All right. Thank you, Kat. And then I have somebody on the line, NMBI. Do you have something to, if you have something to say, you can raise your hand and we can open the floor to you. Okay. Did not raise hand. All right, so that's it.
That's it? Okay.
More.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we bring it back to the committee for discussion? Anybody want to kick it off? Bob, you're pretty quiet.
What was the total cost to court number 1 to pickleball ultimately?
Well, I'm gonna say that we didn't really run costs. If all you're doing, if we are looking at
This-
resurfacing and restriping it for multiple courts, and if that's all you're doing, it'll be relatively inexpensive, maybe 20 to 30.
20 to 30,000.
I think. I'm trying to remember how much we said to the council it would be to reconvert it if the trial didn't work out. And so it was somewhere, maybe it was even less. I'm gonna say 20 is probably a
He
safe
was the
number.
Top end.
Yeah. And so what that would entail basically is basically resurfacing the court and just striping the multiple pickleballs. And then I guess,
You have to demo the net too,
and then we'd look at permanent nets as well.
building the nets.
You're talking about court 3?
We are talking about court, well,
I just-
right, yeah, I say,
Well, it does matter because you don't want to put pickleball on court 3.
no, I think that for the sake of discussion only, we're talking about court 1. Court 1 is currently used for pickleball. And so I think the question was to convert court 1 permanently with multiple courts on it.
Okay. Okay.
And just, again, this is,
One that are only,
and so this is just conceptual level, rough
But there-
cost number.
There's 2 things right now. One is that the tennis courts are being reserved but not used. And particularly on the days I play, the 3 days I play, there's always a court or 2 that is reserved that I can't play on. But it is, no one is playing on it. So we can play longer. We can play the 2 hours, which we would rather do. You don't want to get pickleball on court 3, and I know we're not talking about that, even if you change it to a hard court, because it's coming closer to the neighbors. And I think you want to keep the courts another distance, the whole court from the neighbors is a good idea. And of course, would have to have the same covering on the walls of the court because they're working for us.
the permanent pickleball courts, if they're built in the, behind the tracks, they would be next to the neighbor's yard.
Yeah, that's not a good idea. That is gonna, I predict that will present problems to us. We gotta find another way, but it is something that will work. Pardon?
Interviewed, he plays pickleball and he said he wouldn't mind.
Haven't had any
We've
complaints.
had no
Guy did.
complaints, that's what I asked.
Like it's
Guy
that much
that lives
further.
behind where if you,
Yeah.
put the second one there,
Okay,
yeah, he said that, but I agree with you, the reserved and not being used. I walk through the park all the time. Tell you, all the courts are reserved, but there's maybe one lesson going on, maybe somebody else, but that's it. A lot of times I go through on a Sunday or Friday or something like that. There's nobody on any of the courts.
Is it the key holder or is it Player Capital that had the reservation? Or you don't?
Well,
No,
Player
it's-
Capital reserves, I
it's-
believe, 4 courts. You know, I've suggested several times that maybe we pull it back. We have to negotiate with
Yeah.
them. But they reserve them and they don't release them, or they release them too late. This could do anything with it.
they don't release them. At least they don't on the days I'm there, which is Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Yeah,
They're not
I agree
released.
with you 100%, Bob.
The other problem is that,
Before we move on, if it's Player Capital, we can ask Michael to release, if he's not using it, release the courts.
well, yeah, you can get him to do that, go for it.
But he needs to release them at least a day in advance.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It
people
doesn't
know.
do, yeah, it doesn't do much good for them to be released that morning
Yeah.
for a 10 o'clock game. So there's going to have to be something else set up to get that released. So, because people are looking a week ahead
I'm
to
thinking.
get a reservation.
Yeah,
So-
so,
Be a good neighbor for, I mean, because he's kind of a guest of ours, of the towns, using the courts that, you know, as part of when he does do the reservation, but also free up those times during that same period where he's making the reservations, free up the courts where he knows he's not going to have a student coming in for whatever reason, but I don't know.
I don't know what's going on there. I just know there's a lot of courts available that are shown to be reserved on the sheet. So I just know that happened.
And then you had another point.
Um,
I think this discussion will go on.
Don't interrupt me.
Sorry. But Frank, you had something. We'll come back to you. You didn't have anything?
Just with regard to research, I
Right.
don't think you have to research.
microphone, please.
So that people online, so Kat and others can
I'm
hear
glad
what
you're bringing that,
saying.
because I meant to ask about the research.
So I don't think you would need to resurface the courts, they just need to be relined.
Yes, so I'll clarify. So when I talk about resurfacing, I mean basically redoing all the green paint and the new lines and having a new field for each pickleball court. And so I'm not talking about putting new asphalt down, but basically the new surface coating so that you have the right colors in the right spots with the lines. As opposed to what we did for the trial is the tennis courts are all in really good shape now. And all we did for pickleball was overstripe, right? So we left the tennis court in place, put down the new striping for the pickleball trial. But that works for dual use. And if you're going to for any of the courts to be redone for multiple courts, what we're talking about is having to take out those lines, put in new lines, and you don't want if it's permanent pickleball, you don't want the lines associated with, and the field associated with the tennis court
Right,
underneath.
okay.
And so if that
And you could put in
clarifies,
at least one more court, possibly two.
right?
That's right.
And so it's basically I call it resurfacing, but in essence, it's repainting the entire court and putting in new lines.
Which is going to be my point, but, and also I'll just point out that if you put 4 courts, then pickleball players would probably prefer that you just left the tennis net there because it's a nice divider and it prevents balls from going up.
You can still use that court for tennis.
Because that was my other question. Were you guys talking about?
The growth of the pickleball usage may preclude having that much tennis on it.
Yeah, the Menlo Park courts are 4 courts with the tennis net still there, so in theory, it could be used for tennis.
So,
There's also, I read a Sports Illustrated article, some sport called paddle or padel. Apparently it's growing, it's gonna beat up pickleball pretty soon. So, I don't know. We're gonna be having this discussion again in a year.
there is a question brought up about open play and extending the hours, but it's not on the agenda, so I don't think we can discuss it here, but it might be something we discuss at a future meeting. And if we do, then, we'll have to think through, whether we can do some kind of open play or some kind of extension of hours. In terms of the clay court, one thing that kind of troubles me that might be worthwhile exploring into making it pickleball is that it is not very heavily used, the clay court, in terms of the amount of time reserved. At least when I look at the monthly reservations, it comes to basically about an hour a day gets used for the clay court. And last year was like a third of an hour of a day. And you look at, it's about 60% less than the lowest used tennis court is the clay court. So while there may be some folks who are very passionate about clay, I'm not seeing the usage by those folks to say, keep using it compared to the people who want to play tennis on a hard court or the people who want to use pickleball. So I know the clay court kind of interests me in terms of it's a way to expand the amount of tennis court usage for those who wanted to have another hard court out there if we convert it back to a hard court. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of. And one thing go ahead.
I can get on the clay court just about any time I want because it's so underused, not used. And mainly, I'm not on it anymore. I used to play on clay all the time. Now I'm afraid of getting hurt because the surface of that court isn't right. It's either too soft or too hard. And when it's soft, it's really soft. I've gone down as deep as 6 inches going for a ball, and usually you fall. And I can't do that anymore. I have to have something better than the surface to play on, like which was done by the town when they put that surface under the current courts that we had. We had stuff cracking every 6 months, 6 or so months, and now these courts have stayed in pretty good shape for years, and that's really good. The other problem we have is everybody wants to play on Saturday or Sunday morning or around that time. So that has to be taken into account because it's very hard to get on the court on a Saturday or a Sunday. And that's, you can't get a reservation either on the clay courts or on the tennis courts or on the pickleball courts. And so that's something that has to be dealt with. I think we currently can expand, personally, I think we currently expand the time for pickleball on the pickleball court.
So it seems like if the clay court was converted to a hard court for tennis, number 1 court was made into 4 pickleball courts, and then we played around with timing, reservations, and making sure there are no-shows or try to eliminate that we could be in a pretty good place, potentially.
Yeah, that's possible.
The only other thing I'd like to remind people is that somebody donated the money for that clay court, and it wasn't very long ago. It was only 5 or 6 years ago. And I would be a little troubled by just deciding to convert that back to a hard court. It's establishing a precedent of giving us $150,000 and then 5 years later dumping on it. I don't know. I would.
Frank, that keeps coming up, so that's what I think we need to resolve. Is it something that we can, discuss, or is that off limits because it was donated? That's
No,
been
I'm just-
coming around.
Ultimately, the community has to use it.
Right.
There was a good faith attempt that we make it available to the community as much as we can. We even give a clay court only key. And I've asked staff in terms of how many Atherton residents do we sell a clay court only key to? And I think it's no revenue, right?
Yeah, so nobody just bought
clay
the
court only
clay
key. And
court
it's
key only.
yeah,
No,
it's
but you
it's half
can,
the
when you
price
buy
of
the regular court
early
key,
on.
you can get it with the clay court key. I'm gonna,
No, it's Atherton residents too. If you
so
pay
Menlo
$50.
Park residents would have to pay, would reserve hourly. But I'm going to say this, from what I had heard, was the person that donated the court did it, their kid was in high school or something and has since moved on. But I think Michael expressed it that for USTA classification and ranking, you need to have X number of hours on clay court.
So-
If I recall correctly from when Michael spoke at the last council meeting, spoke.
Similar things. One was that there was some remuneration to past year. I don't know. Claim that on in better shape. And that USTA requires you players, this is the only available that from court player, but that's it. But
Yeah.
they, well, you know, we only have one guy playing on it. That's what I've heard.
So
Yeah,
we should be.
so I'm going to say that the hard part, and this is why it's also coming to you folks, is that July, I'm going to say, looking at the history that we have, July and August June, July, and August are likely the highest months of use. And that may be because Michael uses it during the summer for camps,
As well as the key holders.
as well as the key holders, right? So not counting those 3 months, you're talking up to 20 hours a month of use for the clay court. And so I'm just looking at the
numbers.
numbers in the
Yeah,
package.
Yeah, this year, the clay court usage has gone up, but it was averaging like an hour a day. I was seeing.
So,
They fixed it? Okay. I told.
yeah, no, I'm going to say this past year, the town did spend a good chunk of money to fix up the clay courts. And Michael, I think, has been doing a little better job on the daily maintenance of it. But it's hard when use is sporadic.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at March, April, and May, it's 19 and a half, 18 and 15 clay court hours. I know it doesn't count Michael's player capital hours, but just in terms of key holders, it's extremely low. And then when people are saying, you know, like, we can't get a hard court, we can't get pickleball time, and then we're keeping this clay court for a small number of people, you know, and I mean, that's why I'm also trying to find out the revenue, because if at least we can justify, well, it's bringing, you know, thousands of dollars to the town or something like that, then, okay, maybe that's different. But we're not selling a Atherton key only, and did we get how much we're making? Because we rent the court for $30 an hour for non-residents. So that does that come to the town, or?
We haven't gotten it. We need to talk to Michael about that.
Okay.
I'm having a senior moment. What do we charge for keys, and is that prorated? Like if somebody comes to get a key in June, do they pay half the annual price? They still pay
It's
the,
September,
You get half
September
price.
it's a split.
oh, okay, and what's the Atherton price again?
105.
105 and non,
275, I think.
Yeah, 275, 285.
And then, listen, I mean, that's February.
Yeah.
And they can purchase it, I think, January,
February.
February, we changed the locks. That full price is running through the summer. And then after the summer, I think as the chair said, in September, the price drops because weather starts changing and.
okay, thanks.
No, I was just going to say on the clay court, we don't have a clay court. Let's face it. I played on clay courts for 10 years. They kept in shape. That means they had a full-time person, not full-time, a half-a-day person working on the clay court at 7 o'clock in the morning and at 5, 6, or 7 o'clock at night. And then every time you got on the court, it was a good court. You could see the lines. Ours are covered with clay. You can be evenly running around the court and you know what surface you're going to hit. And I played on courts like that for 10 years. It's not like that here. It's completely different. It's just a clay surface. And if that's okay with you, that's okay. So we have to know what kind of a clay court we have. And it's it needs a lot of work.
Okay, do you have a recommendation from us, or did we give one to you?
I will repeat kind of what I heard, and you can either all nod as you can all agree or tell me that I am mishearing. So the primary two options are look at two courts on the backside, including conversion of the handball court. But it seems that there's a greater consensus of a permanent conversion of court one with the potential, if the donor is going to be, to do that, to try and mitigate the loss of a tennis court by conversion of the clay court to a hard court. Is that the general consensus with a preference towards permanent conversion, clay court conversion with 4 courts on court 1?
At Neelan, the court, it's got 4 pickleball courts on it. Did you say they do still use that for tennis?
Theoretically, yes, but it.
Never
No,
get, no,
they
I
don't.
know there's not the demand. Nobody uses it because of demand, but it could be used as a tennis. I just want to make sure that.
Well, I'm going to say in where I live, they did similar to that. So they took a tennis court at first. Probably what they have at Neelan is that they overstripe just like we did. Instead of doing 2, they stripe 4. And then you have 4 temporary nets. And so that lasts for as long as you want it to go. And if you want to say, okay, no more if the demand is not there for pickleball, then you're going to take away those nets and it's going to be back to a tennis court.
Right, I was just inquiring whether 4 pickleball courts on a tennis court can still be sometimes pickleball and sometimes tennis. You're saying technically, yes, sometimes.
Technically, yes, but your demand is going to say no.
I'm not talking about demand, I'm just talking about whether the court can still, are talking about the number of tennis courts we have. So that doesn't completely eliminate tennis court.
So I think what Julie might be suggesting is, what if we converted that court 1 from 2 temporary pickleball courts to 4 temporary pickleball courts?
The cost of restriping is going to be the same because I have to take out all the temporary lines and repaint
The
the
same
entire.
as what?
I'm going to say essentially it'll be almost the same price as permanently painting the 4 courts. Because I have to remove the temporary lines and the only way to do that is to repaint the courts.
Right, I understand that. What I'm trying to do is just, if the clay court, because the clay court discussion has been going on forever. Donor and hurting it, quality of it, and that seems to go round and round. It doesn't seem to be something that we can resolve with any finality, and so that's why I was just saying.
I think we're getting.
Are we getting there?
Well, I feel like we're getting there because I think once we get the revenue numbers, we'll have kind of a full picture. Especially because we have a good history now of court usage overall. You know, we've collected much more data. So I think we can make a recommendation maybe next month once we get the rental numbers for the clay court. For the pickleball courts, I want to get the cost of the permanent courts near the rail tracks, and then cost of converting the clay to hard court, and then the cost of repainting court 1 into permanent pickleball courts. Getting those 3 and understanding that, 1, it'll give Rick something to work with when he talks to the donor. 2, it'll give us a good idea of the relative costs, and then we can kind of weigh what is the best solution based on the money available and from public policy level, what to do. And then next month, we'll still talk about pickleball, but in a different way. I want to talk about the open play and whether to have that and how long to have that and extending the hours, and when and how long to do that. It's not on the agenda this month, so we can't talk about it this month, but we'll also have another month of numbers, because this is for the temporary. This is the pickleball area, temporary. Next month, we'll have another month of numbers of summer, and we'll see if what we see in May keeps up, because in May, it increased about 33%, a third more than, or quarter more than the previous month. So it really increased the amount of usage, and I can see Saturdays are pretty darn packed. So if it keeps up, we can have a case then to make a recommendation to say we should extend the hours, and then maybe get some ideas from the committee and maybe the public about when to extend it. Whether it's late Saturday, because we have on Tuesday and Thursdays the 4 to 7, or middle of the day. 12
Okay,
to 2,
so
something like
we can add that to the next meeting. So before we move on, I was just going to show you an illustration. This is another community which, similar to what was being expressed about Nealon, it's 4 pickleball courts on top of 1 tennis court. And so what I was getting at is if we don't remove the lines that we have now, it's just going to be a jumbled mess. So this community, actually, after having this situation for a while, they needed to redo their courts. And this is what it looks like now. And so they permanently converted that 1 court to 4 courts. And then you can barely see it, but they actually overstriped the adjacent tennis court for temporary courts. That's how strong.
Dual use.
Dual use, yeah. And so that's how excessive their demand was, how their demand was.
Yeah, and that's why I was just trying to get at short-term solution to an immediate problem. Because, we're at,
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize that we couldn't talk about changes, hours available for all players in this.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda, so.
Okay.
Put it on the agenda so
I'll put it on.
visitors, they can come and show their support or whatever, make
Got
their
it.
comments.
Yep.
Say is, if the choice ultimately is to make permanent courts as opposed to temporary. Enhances the entire experience. This looks.
Okay.
I think we're done with this. We'll move on to the next topic. Thank you all for coming in.
Thank you.
Tell you what, we'll convert the clay court, give me the clay, and I'll build a rammed earth ADU in my property that will help the housing element, and we'll have an extra tennis court.
Okay, well, we can build an apartment complex on the clay court instead. How about that? Okay, so 5B, park maintenance project updates. Will?
Yes, I just wanted to give you guys an update of all the projects that have been going on at the park and the completion of all of them. Jennings Pavilion, the flooring has been finished. We got the painting done, and we are now looking into lighting. If inside your packet, you'll see kind of a breakdown of different examples of kind of chandeliers that were sent to me from Coast Lighting for you guys to look over. I could meet separately with Dorothy and Frank since they are kind of like the subcommittee when it comes to these different designs we're doing, but those are different options for more of a modern take on chandeliers that you guys can look over and give any kind of input that you would like. The main house upstairs, the flooring was completed as well. The art room floor was completed, and the painting will be starting on this Monday and be finished by next week. So the art room will be painted and flooring done. About 2 weeks ago, the baseball stands were completely painted and refreshed, as well as the dugouts. So that's all completed. As Frank knows, the fountain was reinstalled, and the pump and water is working.
The water's working.
The water is working. As
Okay.
of today, we got everything running perfectly, so seems to be working. It's on a timer from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., which can be adjusted, of course. But as of from yesterday to today, everything's working correctly. Just to touch on last month's meeting where there was concerns about parking and people going onto the mulch. We've rectified that through the turnabout and the exit area, installing barricade and railroad tiles. So that was completed too. So that's everything I have right now. I know there was some talk about fencing around the fountain and other landscaping things. I'm not sure if Robert has info on that, but that's all of the projects right now and where they're at.
Yeah, thanks, Will. I think there's been a lot of compliments for the work that's been done, so thank you.
Thanks, great.
Definitely.
So there are, I'm going to say, there was a concern by the foundation with regards to protection of the fountain and a request to look at potential ways to fence off, or I'm going to say fence off is the wrong word, is to provide some sort of barrier from little children from climbing into the fountain. We contacted a fencing company to give us some ideas and options, and basically not much is made in a short height, and so we are almost going to be looking at something that would be custom. And so they provided a brochure, which you have, and the indication is that they'd likely buy the panels and cut them down to size. Our thought was that we're talking maybe about an 18-inch total height, and it would be bolted into the brick surrounding the fountain.
Side of,
No, because the basin of the fountain comes up and over the edge of the brick, and the brick, I think, is, I want to say maybe about 16 inches in depth. And so it would be pretty much in the middle of that depth, kind of in the octagonal shape of the fountain.
we could sit on that, around it, discussed it inside, but they could still sit there. That's the only way we can do it. It's more important to protect it.
Yeah, I wouldn't tempt the kids.
I looked at that and I think they're correct. I don't think there's any way you could put it inside because it does have the filigrees or whatever they called, those things that come out on the
so
corners.
that's it.
We're gonna have to put somebody outside. Did you guys ever find a,
Just-
oh, go ahead, sorry.
Will, do you have a picture of the fountain that you can share on the screen?
I don't know if I have one on there. Let me look.
You have the lovely thing on your phone that has the fountain working.
I do have that.
If you want to email that to me, I can probably pull it up and share it. So that way, I think it might help contextually to see what the fountain looks like now that it's in place. So before we get pricing, we kind of wanted to get feedback as to what the committee is thinking about, and then there's conversation after pricing, how and who might potentially pay for it. And so there's a variety of options, and I think what we're looking at would likely be some sort of metal fencing. And here we go. Thank you, Will. Give me a second and I'll,
I sent you a couple.
okay, here we go.
Spikes. Well, little kid playing around with the spikes and stab.
I actually did want to, now that it's in place and the water's on, I went to bring Oleg back and get his ideas on, because he did a phenomenal job on that thing. There we go.
Okay, so like Frank said, I mean, the fountain looks fantastic. And so when I was talking about the fountain basin coming over the edge, that's what we're looking at. I see if, since this is a video, I'm going to see if we can't. So you can see here, this is the depth that we're talking about. And so somewhere in the middle of that, kind of going around the fountain on top of the brick. So one thing I was thinking about so that it wouldn't be too pokey, for lack of a better way to put it, is there's this style on page 15 in the brochure that kind of has a rounded top. And so that'll be, I mean, because you know the kids are going to come and they're probably going to even stick their hand through the fence, which is fine. But at least there's not going to be something spiked up. And this looks, to me anyway, and it's your decisions to make, it looks better than kind of a straight rail top, in my opinion. And so, like I said, this is a starting point for a conversation to try and see what aesthetic the committee overall is interested in seeing. This by no means is not the only manufacturer that makes things. I was even looking at, there are some that are kind of more designed to be used as yard edging that basically get pressed into dirt. And so that's also an option. Drill holes, sink it in and glue it in, as opposed to kind of trying to bolt it down. But all has to be sized, measured, and I'm going to say it's going to have to be customized either way. So.
Is there anything else on this topic?
Looking for feedback.
I'll feedback. I like the idea of the curve because kids can't walk on it or sit on it.
True.
Or they're less likely to walk on it or sit on it. With the little arches, I think it looks good.
Yeah. And then the other item, I wanted to get some clarity, and I know Walt's not here, but we have both Frank and Bill. There was some conversation about wanting or looking at some additional landscape hedging between the event garden and, I don't know, the restrooms.
Yeah, maybe.
West side.
And trying to get a little clarity on where, and then we'd be thinking about timing in relationship to bathroom work and kind of what might be transpiring in the general area. So I'm going to share again the aerial image of the park, just so I can better understand where the desired screening would be. So here. So here we have the event garden, and this actually shows the new planting that was done around the event garden. This is the restroom building, and out this way is the Little League field. And so are we looking at just kind of a line behind the existing, behind the new landscaping? Just kind of a straight line hedge there?
Yeah, like something that's all English or something like that. Originally, they asked for a fence, but hedging would be better. Just want something, it was supposed to be like a secure, secluded place, you know, have an event and you have different seating areas where people can be private, and sitting there, there's the restroom. Frank, any?
To be honest, I'm not the I'm not sure conceptually where Jeremy and Susan were the ones that were working on that, and I would,
Put it on the edge.
they kind of did, but I don't know to what extent, which edge and to what extent they
Yeah,
want it.
so what would be helpful is to get more clarity on what the concern and potential recommendations might be. Say honestly, I'm not a plant person. I don't know one type of hedge from
And a
another.
low maintenance hedge too, so that you don't have to.
And so having clarity, and if they have a couple of plant palette suggestions, we're certainly open to hearing.
Well,
Well,
that.
I felt that.
no problem. No problem.
The Vanguard ends here. These are the last sets of plans. And so, I mean, if you want to put it further out, that's fine, but this is where the vegetation is stopping. So you put it somewhere, you know, right around here. Yeah. And so, and all they want to do is have it secluded. Whether or not it goes around here, I don't think that was the question. It's just to keep it away from the restroom.
There's around the courtyard here, there's a plant that they use that are pretty low maintenance. So would that be a candidate to use as the hedge?
I'm gonna say.
Well, it's.
I'm going to say I'm not a plant person.
Yeah.
I think that we can almost put anything, I think we put some screening vegetation around the Gilmore House to provide some, something between that pathway that runs behind the North Meadow.
But that one has to be shaped, right? Or it kind of grows out.
Like I say, at some point, everything needs to be trimmed and maintained.
Not the one next to the courtyard. It just
Well, that's
keeps
because you wanted to keep growing and hide it,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's the difference.
Okay.
But like I said, I can't tell, I don't know.
Okay.
If you told me a species, I wouldn't know it from another one. And then there's questions of, should it be flowering or not flowering, those kinds of things. I'm less concerned about the maintenance. We have a maintenance we have folks at the park taking care of the vegetation.
Okay.
And they're doing, as I think you all know, doing
Good
a
job.
great job taking care of the park. And so it's more a matter of understanding what the goals and objectives are and kind of what that plant palette is. And we would check with our landscaping company to see
Which one to use?
which ones might work best. We also would need to figure out kind of spacing. It's going to take a little bit to grow in. But with the installation, we'd be extending the sprinkler system and all of that stuff for it, so.
And it sounds like you're waiting until the new bathrooms are installed.
Well, like I said,
So you have some.
I didn't know exactly where you were talking about, and so we need to figure out
Okay.
what the space requirements are for the bathroom, because if there are lay-down areas and other things, it may be, that may be where we're putting fencing for that project, for all I know. So I'm just trying to figure that part
Let
out.
me get back with the foundation and then we'll determine exactly what we're thinking. I'm pretty sure that he's right, but I want to confirm and I want to make sure I understand the height, the depth of what they're looking at, so.
Stand up and see the rest of
Okay. Are there any, are there any preference on the lighting for the,
One opinion. The wire one, I don't really fully get that.
the second one?
It's hard to envision the
The third
line
one,
drawing,
the,
but the
candlesticks?
first one or the,
I'm assuming on the third one, lights go up and lights go down.
Is that right, Will?
Yes.
see if lights would shine down and lights would shine up.
So one thing that I always notice is sometimes when lighting is chosen, I mean, I realize we'll be cleaning it, but, you know, cobwebs can happen overnight. So sometimes it's a good thing to, like, the round ones always have cobwebs for some.
So the last one with the least amount of apertures to have cobwebs.
I mean, they all have the potential, but. True, it just, some of them, it's more you can see them, it's more obvious. Throwing in another thing to think about as we look at the design, but.
Robert, these were from Coast Lighting or?
These are
Will
from Coast Lighting, yeah.
Okay.
The one on El Camino.
Yeah, just contextually, they're the ones that helped us redo the lights in the lobby.
Do they have a recommendation, or these are all their recommendations?
No, these were just all the recommendations of just taking measurements of the building and what would fit and what would conceptually look good.
Does the committee want to defer to the subcommittee to make a recommendation, or does the committee have a recommendation?
I can't make a decision on that, but with just this limited amount of knowledge, I'll go to Coast Lighting tomorrow and look at these and see what they look like.
It'd also be great if they could try to Photoshop them into the,
Go into there to see what it would be like. Okay.
And is anything going to be done, Will, or do we have the funds to, on all of these ceiling lights?
Yeah, they're gonna work, that's gonna be part of the thing. They're gonna retrofit all of those panels in there to be more of a complementary lighting and brighter in the areas, yeah.
So do you need anything from us right now, or what do you?
It's just something to think about. I'll go back to them and see if I can get them to, Photoshop those in there so for a better perspective, or try to work that out.
And then is there one that you guys want photoshopped in there for them to try first, or are there two of them? Okay. Okay.
so many.
Those are comfy chairs, but they spent a good deal of money on those. Oh, okay.
I would say, if that's something you guys want to do, let me make sure to reach out to Coast Lighting to make sure they have these available for you guys to look at and on
Orthea
display.
Frank, is that, okay, and then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if that's not possible, I'll see if they can set up
Looks like
something.
They're willing to
Yeah.
go out. So-
Okay.
You're willing to make that trek 2 miles north versus downtown. That was good of you. Bill.
Okay. Did we cover everything you needed on this topic, Will? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Robert and Will. 5C, Brightview Quality Site Assessments.
The quality assessment is in your handout. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions or comments?
You need to do a very good job.
Thank you.
We just finished the survey, Robert was here when we looked at it, and people had kudos about our park. And this survey, some of you may have taken. We just got a review of it today for this meeting. And people really are very supportive and enjoying the park, and they're saying it's really
I continue to have people that tell me it's a great park that they didn't know existed until I took it over there. And these are people who live in Atherton for 20, 30 years.
Tell me.
Okay. If there's no more comments, why don't we move on to the Park Foundation report?
Have nothing to report other than the fact that I would like to compliment Will on his diligence to continue to press on. And I heard a lot of swearing and a lot of back and forth, not from him, but from the guys that were in the hole there where the pump was. And I was over there last week and then this week, and I kept Bill kept assuring me that this would happen, and it did. And I have to say, it looks fantastic, and it's going to be a great addition once we get the little bit of the, and did you guys find did you ask Steve Tyler if you had an image of the broken? I did. Do you, no, nobody's got it? Yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. I will say that the crew from MCE, it took a lot of Imagineering and troubleshooting to make that happen. So they really put in hours, and a lot of patience was tested during that, but they got it working. So thank you.
Okay. Park Division monthly report.
The Park Division report is in your packet. Just going over a few things. Our rentals went up a little bit this month. We had a couple events in the Jennings Pavilion and Main House. As you can see, the tennis court usage, pickleball jumped up once again. Throughout the park, we did a couple, the painting of the baseball stands was completed. Obviously, the fountain was installed and now running. We worked inside the Gilmore House. We did some working inside the play school, did some camera cleaning for the PD, worked on the pumping. We did the park barricades along the roadways for inhabiting parking. We had to do a tree removal and stump removal, and we've been working on some of the channel cleanup along the fence line of Holbrook Palmer Park too.
And from the tennis usage, as I mentioned, pickleball went way up from 196 hours to 255 hours.
Yes.
So we'll see if that keeps up. And I just kind of looked at the amount of rental time, and Saturday is pretty darn packed all the time. So it's very high usage. In fact, high usage all across the board for pickleball now. So. Some other things I noticed, there's more, this is a funny thing, more celebration of life events than wedding events at Jennings now. So I guess it's not something you usually advertise, but
No.
maybe we got to advertise in more mortuary magazines or something like that than in the wedding magazines. Hey, they have money to spend, right?
I had one of my friends 20 years ago say it's never good when you go into more funerals and weddings, and I'm there now. That's terrible.
But you know they're going to keep the place nice. They're not going to wreck it. Let's see. What else did I have here? One question, Will, about the revenue. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, it's tiny. But I was seeing that the revenue that the town keeps was 10,140, but I thought that we're collecting like 13,870 in revenue. Could that be just accounting for when we used to have catered to and we had to give them the extra amount, or are we now keeping everything, all the 13,870
That I think is part of the deposits, and then the 10,000 is what our revenue was.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
you return that.
We
part
return
of
the
it.
deposits, yeah.
Okay. And then good job on the parking lots, which I mentioned before.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't have anything else. Did anyone else have comments on park report? Seeing none, the next one is 5 park events. I guess it's kind of the same.
Yeah,
You
it's
were reported
covered in
that?
both of them,
Okay. And then 6D, is there any individual committee member comments? I have a few comments. So since this is the end of the fiscal year, we'll take a look in July at our top 3 initiatives. Hopefully, we'll have an update on the bathrooms for the children's playground. The last update I got from staff on that is they're still working through whether they can deliver the prefab bathrooms because they're quite heavy, and they're seeing if they can actually bring them in and such. So depending on that, it's, bridge weight problem, Although it's possible to have more axles, you were saying? but-
Yeah, so the last I heard is that they could bring in the pieces on the flatbed, The concern now is getting the crane in.
Okay, the crane's too heavy.
So the crane is heavy, and so I'm not quite sure how they plan to bring that in, so that's what they were gonna do their calculations on, is they could manage that.
So once we know that, we know which bathroom to choose, and then once we know that, we can then put it out to bid. Or we can approve it and then put out the bid. Do we need to approve anything, or is it just,
You'll give your blessing, but it's ultimately the council that's gonna be the doing the approval.
so hopefully it'll be by July, otherwise we'll have to wait till September. Thanks for reminding us, Bill. And then, future topics I plan to add for July, besides the pickleball topic I mentioned. The town survey came in, so we can take a look at that and see if there's anything we want to act based on that. And then, we'll also take a look at the council-approved park capital project plan for fiscal year 26 and beyond. So if there's anything we want to think about as we plan our fiscal year too. That's all I had. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, done. Thanks all.